All right, welcome back. We got our weekly stock market update coming to you on a Sunday, and it was a very busy week this week in the stock market. We're going to look at the heat map for some individual names. We'll look at the index, some crypto news, and as we're going through some of the names, I'll give you the news from the week. We had a lot of earnings. We had a Fed meeting. There was a lot going on this week, and next week will also be another busy week. So some of the big winners this week, you have Nvidia, all-time high, up 10%. Google, all-time high, up 10%. Apple, up 4%, all-time high. Amazon, up 10%, all-time high. So a lot of big tech names that reported earnings this week, blowout numbers. I would say for most companies out there, they are crushing the earnings and the earnings expectations. Now, their guidance could have been lowered because of the whole tariff deal that happened. So they're crushing the expectations based on they lowered them earlier in the year. That could be the case. But regardless, these companies are firing on all cylinders and the numbers look great. And the train keeps on rolling here. But you do see a quite mixed market here. You got a lot of other names that are red. Meta down 12%. They had a $15 billion tax charge that the market wasn't really expecting, and the market is also worried about how much they're spending on AI without really having a competitive product to some of these other companies. You have Walmart down 5%, Costco down 3%, some other names like Chipotle are down, United Healthcare down. So it is a pretty mixed market here, but the biggest, most powerful companies for the most part are really still pushing this market up, and it was a very, very strong week for some of those big tech companies. Nvidia, they had their conference this week, and they had a lot of great announcements, a lot of great partnerships, and they just are such a phenomenal business. And same thing with Google, they are crushing it. So congratulations to shareholders there, because those are some beautiful, beautiful numbers, and does not look like it's slowing down anytime soon. And as far as Amazon, Google, and Microsoft for the cloud, those companies continue to just dominate the cloud, and that is also growing at a phenomenal pace. So for the overall market, you have the NASDAQ that was up 2%, the S&P was up 1%, you've got the bond market down, you've got gold down, pulling back a little bit, and crypto is also down. Looking at the crypto heat map here, Bitcoin down 1.5%, Ethereum down 3%, but it was a pretty volatile week this week. We had some big liquidations, and then we had some small recoveries, liquidations. We've just been kind of bobbing back and forth here. No real ground has been gained here for crypto. Now, I did mention the Fed had their meeting. They did cut interest rates by 25 basis points, and the market tends to kind of front run this. We're looking at the 10-year yield. We're still in a nice downtrend, but once the Fed cut rates, the market is doing like a sell the news, so yields tend to pop after the interest rate cut. Because it's already priced that in. Bonds have already come down in anticipation of that because we knew we were getting a rate cut. And then in the press release, or in the conference, Jerome Powell did say that the next meeting, it's not a certainty that they're going to cut. They did mention how with the government shutdown, they don't have a lot of data. So he said, if your windshield is fogged up, you tend to slow down. So they're saying, hey, we don't have as much visibility here based on the lack of data that they have, so they will probably begin to slow down their rate cuts. The other big news was that they did stop quantitative tightening. So that is a huge, in addition to cutting interest rates, that is a huge monetary change. They've been selling bonds, so now they're going to stop selling bonds, stop unloading their balance sheet. And when they feel like they need to stimulate the economy a little bit more or help the bond market, they can then turn to start buying assets again. So that'll also push interest rates down because they will be a large buyer of interest rates, which brings the yield down. So that was, I would say, the biggest news from the Federal Reserve. We knew we were getting an interest rate cut. I think the Fed also wants to kind of cool off the market a little bit and not get so much exuberance. So by them saying, hey, we don't know if we're going to cut next week, it's not a clear cut that we're going to lower interest rates, that kind of slammed the brakes a little bit on the market's enthusiasm of just rate cut. So that is the news from the Fed. Now let's go ahead and look at the S&P 500. all-time high. It was a huge ripper this week. We just had a gap up on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Then we had earnings. We pulled back a little bit, and then we shot up on Friday, and then we gave some of those gains back. So very strong week here for the market, and the NASDAQ will look similar here as well. Yep, just a huge move here from Monday, from last Thursday. We had Friday, big gap up. Monday, big gap up. We just kept moving up, pulled back, shot up, pulled back. So we'll see where we go. Little extended here. Wouldn't surprise me if we pull back a little bit within the next couple of weeks, but nothing is telling me that this market cannot keep going for the next couple of quarters. Let's take a look at some individual names here. Before we do that, let's take a quick look at Ethereum and Bitcoin. Just consolidating sideways here. So Ethereum is below that $4,000 level. Need to hold this or things could look ugly. But again, crypto tends to go through these big moves up, consolidate, bores people, will have a liquidation, and then that exhausts all the sellers. The buyers step in when they see prices that they like, and then we shoot up to our next move. You can really see that for Bitcoin when we zoom out. We'll get these large move up, then we'll consolidate. Sellers come in, take profits. Sellers get exhausted. We get one last liquidation sweep. Buyers come in, boom, shoot the price up. Then we consolidate more, small sell-off, liquidation, and then we'll shoot back up. So I'm still very constructive on the crypto market, and with gold pulling back a little bit, that should give some room for money to go into the crypto market, because we do have a nice pullback here on gold. This was just a crazy move, little extended here. Wouldn't surprise me if we come back down to 3,500 bucks before gold can move back up. But people sell gold, they're going to rotate into Bitcoin. Gold is a $25 trillion plus asset. Bitcoin is still hanging around 2 trillion. So even a 5% drop on gold, if you just get a small amount of that money to rotate into crypto, that's going to move those prices up quite a bit. All right, volatility. We did have a nice collapse on the VIX after the China tariff stuff. And then we're kind of percolating back up here. So we'll see where we settle out here. With earnings, you're getting a lot of volatility. When Amazon's up 15% and Meta's down 15%, that's going to cause the market to have some volatility. But still, not a huge spike here. I did mention the China news. We do seem to have a little bit more cooling off on that whole conflict there. Both parties are talking. No deal is done yet, but it does seem more constructive than where we were a few weeks ago when we had this huge volatility spike. All right, Amazon, huge move up here. So great move for Amazon. Just really been consolidating sideways all year. This is a stock that is finally playing catch up for the rest of the market, but they did have a great earnings quarter. $180 billion reported for this last quarter, and AWS is growing at a nice clip as well. AWS is growing at a pace that it hasn't grown since 2020. So that is good to see for Amazon, because people were very worried about AWS and them losing some of the pie to Google and Microsoft. But the whole pie is growing like we've talked about. There's room for all these players to win, and Amazon has the largest cloud business, and they're continuing to reaccelerate their growth. So that's good to see there. Tesla chopping around here, just getting up to this upper level here, but looking good. Doing such a great job. Anytime there's a sell-off, it shoots back up. We do have the shareholder vote, I believe, this week on the 6th. So that is going to be a huge catalyst for Tesla. Wouldn't surprise me if we move 5 to 10% either direction on the news. NVIDIA. What a move for NVIDIA. So this was a huge week for NVIDIA. Had a nice sell-off the last few weeks after the whole China news, the tariff news. That was a big red flag for NVIDIA. And then once we got some resolution with that, along with the presentation that Jensen Huang did, just great news. Huge partnerships, huge pipeline for products, but more importantly, they did say by the end of 2026, they are guiding for $500 billion in revenue, which is way more than what the street was expecting. So that is great news for NVIDIA. Again, data center build out continues to be strong. Cloud growth is strong. AI is strong. So that is, NVIDIA is going to be very, very strong, at least for the next couple of years. Uber, not doing a whole lot. Google, another blowout quarter for Google. So we were getting a little bit of a sell-off, but nothing can keep this stock down. This is such a strong performer this year, and just such a phenomenal business. They did have their first ever $100 billion quarter in revenue. Just phenomenal. And this company is just continuing to fire on all cylinders. It wasn't that long ago there was so much noise about Google is going to get taken over by ChatGPT. Nobody's going to use Google search. They're going to get broken up by the government. There were so many negative headlines, but when you look at the sum of the parts for this business, it is just not going anywhere and continues to grow at a rapid pace. So really love to see that total sentiment shift over the last couple of years on Google, and congratulations to all shareholders, because this has been one similar to, I would say Amazon is in the similar boat as Google right now. A lot of headlines, a lot of negativity, not a lot of movement in the stock. People can get bored and move away, but these are phenomenal businesses that are essential and are really big movers for our economy. So wonderful to see that for Google. Palantir all-time high as well, over $200. They announced a partnership with NVIDIA, so that's great to see. What else we want to talk about? Apple. So Apple did peak all-time high at $284. Pretty unbelievable. This stock has been moving tremendously ever since the April lows of 170. So iPhone picking up steam again. This new iPhone is getting a lot of attention sales-wise, and their services continue to grow at a very nice rate. Meta, going the wrong way here for Meta. So I mentioned it before, they had a $15 billion tax bill that they had to pay this quarter. That caused their earnings per share to miss by 84%. So that's a huge surprise, 85% surprise to the downside. But their revenue was still $51 billion. They did beat on revenue, but I guess it's a little bit of a financial charge here that they had to pay. I believe this was a charge that they had to pay based on the new Build Back Better, or Big Beautiful Bill, whatever it's called. So that is an expense that they weren't planning to have at the beginning of the year that they realized this quarter. And then also, they are kind of falling behind on the AI race. No one's talking about Llama. No one's talking about anything that Meta's doing with the glasses. They're kind of flopping all over the place, and they continue to throw a lot of money at those projects, but they still continue to make $51 billion, and they still have billions and billions of monthly active users, and they continue to monetize those users. So this is going to be a company I'm going to be watching. If we can get into the low 600s, I will potentially be making a play on Meta for an investment. This company I still think is a strong performer. And Meta, just like any other stock, will go through periods where it's loved and then it's hated. But eventually, quarter after quarter, the revenue keeps growing, their profitability keeps growing. But this is their first red earnings quarter in a very, very long time here, going back to 2023. So it is justified for the stock to drop. We will just have to wait to see when it bottoms out. Chipotle, man, this thing is a falling knife right now. So Chipotle got killed on earnings. They did meet their numbers, $3 billion in revenue, but they did announce that they are in negative growth. So Chipotle was growing at about, I think it was low teens revenue year over year, but they are now negative growth is what they're projecting. And they did cite that the younger consumer that makes under $100,000 is a little bit stressed and not showing up to their stores. I did see an interesting take. Chipotle has been a company that has raised their prices quite a bit, and I did see an interesting take on Twitter. Someone mentioned, what if Chipotle came out with a $7 burrito that is 700 calories versus a big burrito that's the size of a football for $25? That may get a lot of younger people to come back into the store because it is gone up quite a bit in price, and it is quite a bit of calories for a lunch. If I eat one of those burritos, I'm sitting on the couch all day in comatose. So I thought that was an interesting play or interesting take, and we'll see what Chipotle does from here. I am very constructive on these quick service meals, and I do think Chipotle is another interesting stock. But with all the wonderful innovation that's going out there, I just have a hard time buying a burrito company when you've got Nvidia and Amazon and these companies that are really doing big things and are at the forefront of this AI boom. I have a hard time buying a burrito company. But this is one that I will keep an eye on, and I have been keeping an eye on, but it's still not quite cheap enough for me to dive in. Any other names here? Netflix, they did announce a 10-for-1 split, so this is also going to be an interesting play. So Netflix will be about $118 per share in a week or so on November 17th. I think that's great. That's going to bring more liquidity to the options, and that'll make it easier for people to acquire more shares. Again, nothing changes with the company other than people's ability to buy larger chunks of shares, and that I think that's a great thing. Anyone else report? Microsoft. We've got a double top on Microsoft. So Microsoft did have some big news with OpenAI. They finalized some of their partnership agreements with OpenAI, and I think that was great resolution for Microsoft, and I think it is a good deal that they finalized. So they will still continue to own about 20%, but there's a lot of clauses in there. If OpenAI were to blow up or something were to go wrong, it's not really going to affect Microsoft too detrimentally down the road. So they did a good job of protecting themselves, but also giving them upside to ChatGPT and OpenAI. Not quite sure why the stock continues to pop on earnings and then sells off after. I still have a lot of earnings calls to listen to, and we will do an earnings video after NVIDIA reports their earnings. We'll go over all kinds of companies, all kinds of charts. So stay tuned for that. I think that's about all I want to talk about here. So big week this week, a lot of news, a lot of numbers, a lot of volatility. These are the kind of weeks that I love in the stock market. It's not every week where you see Amazon up 15%, NVIDIA up 10%, all in a day, and then Meta down as well, Chipotle down 20%. Some of these big moves are great for your long-term portfolio, but also great to enter into some positions that you've been wanting to buy on a dip. So I like these weeks a lot. A lot of moving parts here. But that's all I got for this week. Go Dodgers. Congratulations, everyone out there, Dodger fans. Back to back, baby. All right, we'll talk next week. Peace out.